Welcome, everyone. Today is Wednesday, the 4th of February, 2026, and this is the Cluster API office hours. Cluster API is a sub-project of Kubernetes SIGs, and as such, we follow their meeting guidelines, which can basically be summarized as please treat everyone as you would expect to be treated, or explicitly so, please be kind to each other. And if you have a question or you'd like to talk, please raise your hand and I will call on you. So at the beginning of our meetings, we like to take a little time to welcome new attendees and new community members. So if you would like to say hi to everybody and introduce yourself, please do so. I will be quiet for a few minutes and go ahead. Yeah. Is it Borja or Borja?
Hi, yeah, almost. So the right is Borja, but I know it's a bit difficult to pronounce. So yeah, I'll shortly introduce myself. My name is Borja. Some of you know me already. Um, I just started contributing more seriously to CAPI and CAPI related projects the past, I would say, half year. And yeah, and I'm working on a project where we use a lot of CAPI providers. So yeah. Nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you as well. Welcome aboard. I'll do my best here. Borja.
Don't worry. Actually, the way you said it was already very good.
Too kind, too kind. Thank you and welcome.
Thanks.
All right, I'm not seeing any other hands going up or people unmuting, so we will continue on with our open proposal readouts. Do we have anyone here who wants to talk on any of our open proposals?
Um, just that we have a call with the maintainers to work through the independent worker topology. Um, that's that's it for now for that.
Okay, cool. Thank you. All right, then we will move into our discussion topics. And the first one is Nolan about some opportunities to give providers longer support windows. So please take it away.
Sorry,
Oh,
so,
wait,
sorry,
sorry,
Mike.
Fabrizio.
Maybe if someone interested to join in the meeting about the proposal that Igor just brought up, please reach out to Igor.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, that is a great point. I'm just making a note here. Who should people reach out to?
Uh, me or yeah, me because I have the meeting set up, but I'm sure if you reach out to anyone, they can send you my way as well.
All right, cool. I just want to put a note in here in case people come across it. Okay, cool. Thank you. Are we good to move on to Nolan's topic? All right, I'll take silence as a yes. Please, Nolan, take it away.
Sorry. Yeah, so as we've been discussing for a while now, there is the V1 Beta 1 to V1 Beta 2 API and contract migration that's happening. I know Fabrizio and Stefan. Oh, I'm hearing that I'm quiet. Is this better? Okay.
A little
Um,
better. Yeah, probably have to keep that mic as close as possible to your mouth.
okay. I'm gonna need to change something then. Um, so there's been work to migrate from V1 Beta 1 to V1 Beta 2 in both the API and contract. Um, and I know folks have been putting a lot of work in on this. Something we've noticed on the Kappa side is it's been a little tricky to iterate here, having to make new helpers and straddle the contract line. Um, we're kind of following the Cap V changes that have been happening as a model for how we'd like to do it. But we're also seeing that if you have projects that rely on multiple infrastructure providers, it makes upgrading very difficult because different providers upgrade at different cadences. Um, I think this goes for the Kubernetes resources as well as the Go dependencies. Um, this is something I know Borja has been digging into a lot more. And I realize it's not going to be a problem everyone has, and not like we can't coordinate all the work across all the providers easily. That's just been difficult in general. So we're hoping to have discussions on some way, even if it's not 100% supported, but some sort of escape hatch to have a longer support window on the V1 Beta 1 contract or a translation layer or something. I also want to recognize this is kind of similar to the long-term support discussion that Upstream Kubernetes has been having since its inception, and it is the longer these things are maintained, it's a burden on the upstream team too. So I'm hoping we can have a discussion on ways that we can make this easier, both for downstream providers and something that the maintainers are willing to support. I'm gonna call on Fabrizio because I see you made a comment here. Yeah, I'm curious about your thoughts.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So we had a similar discussion last week when we checked more or less progress on provider. I'm not entirely sure I grasp the problem about good dependencies, etc., etc. But I got the general problem that providers are struggling because there is work to be done. Everyone is doing this in their spare time, and so I got it. So I discussed it a little bit with Stefan, and I think that we can start making a first step, which is basically to postpone, stop serving V1 Beta 1, and then basically stop serving the contract by one release. This gives 4 months long. I think that we should keep so, and this also keeps, from a maintainer point of view, we have to not figure it out how to split the deprecation of the API from the contract, etc., etc. It is also, we have this written all around the documentation. Let me say, we have only one day. It is simple to think about. It's simpler to communicate, etc., etc. So, and this gives 4 months more. I think that I personally think that this should be the last postponement for V1 Beta 1 API. Okay. This doesn't mean that if we found ourselves in a corner, we can think something about the contract, but let's try to work with this deadline in mind and figure it out, emergency plan if we really have. Stefan?
Yeah, agree, obviously, as you were talking about it before the meeting. Apart from that, yeah, I think basically from a core copy maintenance point of view, we have a lot of stuff. Now, let's say we have a long timeline, basically regarding the API removal, right? So basically, are we going to, I don't know, first we introduce beta 2, then we stop serving, then we drop it entirely. And the plan today is basically, I think if I remember correctly, until end of 2027. Just, dealing with all the storage version migration, manage field cleanup. There's a lot of stuff in there. So that's why I think in general for like the API removal, again, emphasizing API removal, definitely fine to delay by release, but we should be just like, this is like the biggest maintenance problem from a core copy point of view, that we don't delay this for like a very long time. On contract, I think we just have a lot more room here. And I would also say, let's just go with like delay by 1 for now. Let's see how it goes. And that's not the last word on it, I would say, or not necessarily the last word on it, that we just delay by 1. For contract, the maintenance is, in my opinion, like it's basically dropping a bunch of like if-else code in like free controllers, I think. and cluster cuddle. But from a controller point of view, it's not that much compared to the amount of stuff that we need to keep serving beta 1, and then the 2 years of follow-up work to eventually be able to get rid of it at some point. Delaying the contract further won't affect the API removal timeline that much. So yeah, overall it sounds good to me.
Does this goes in the direction that you are thinking about, Nolan?
Yeah, I think from a Kappa point of view, I think that's hugely helpful. I admit I'm not intimately familiar with the problems that Borja was running into, but I know at a high level, he's working on a control plane integration that uses CAPI across infrastructure providers. So
Okay.
it's importing a bunch of different providers, but I think that can be a separate discussion apart from this, and that might be something that we're self-inflicting too.
So if I might just add to that. So yeah, one part of the discussion, especially because you, Fabrizio, also asked like what problem with Go dependencies. I think that half is like self-inflicted, and we are already looking at making it properly. So I think that part is not to discuss upstream. It's our own demise. And it's more the part of what I've seen trying to get this all together, that, you know, the CAPI landscape is very variated, and there are many different providers, and they have very different, let's say, sizes and amount of people dedicated to them. And some of them, unfortunately, are do not have that much people on them, right? And for those, they have a hard time keeping up. And if they have a hard time keeping up, as for us, as soon as one provider is not able to keep up, we can't keep up. And we're also trying to solve that a bit by decoupling more. But as of today, it holds us back a bit. And then we get a bit scared, so to say, oh, I'm not sure I will be able to drop this completely by that date, because, you know, this provider has no maintainers and we need it. And that gets us in a strange situation. And the last thing I've noticed is that on some providers, like, for example, I was surprised how little amount of people read the migration guide that you guys wrote, which is fantastic, right? The 110 to 111 migration in the CAPI book. And I was surprised that people were freestyling the migration, right? And well, you know, so that's kind of the situation. A very variated thing, and you can find many different things, and that's why this delays that much, I think.
Yeah,
And that's what I'm
thank you
experiencing.
Thank you for context. Yes, unfortunately, there is not much that we can do for provider staffing. Yeah, because we are already.
Of course, yeah.
But you
Not
know,
the
there
expectation.
there are some idea float around. Richard recently brought up something about compatibility, some sort of CAPI compliance. I don't know how this will shape out. Let me say, I think that we can provide a better signal to provider about the direction that they are taking. But at the same time, we have also to set a boundary in the sense that let me try to phrase this nicely. So if I look at the cluster API contract defines some rules, but at its foundation is give a lot of freedom to the providers on how to actually implement stuff. So we do expect some behavior, we do expect some field in CRDs, but how you skin your onion basically it is, you are free. You can write, provide in any language, etc., etc. At the same time, in the book, we have place where we give guideline, and I don't know. If you want to do login in this way and you're using Golang, that's the way that we recommend because it works nicely with, it is consistent with the rest of Kubernetes. Or if you want to, I don't know, if you want to use these flags, you will get HTTPS security, etc. So we give guidelines, but I think that we have to keep this balance between what is mandatory and what instead is the area where provider can do things different because they need it and because this is valuable. And so yeah, we have to work on giving a better signal, but at the same time we have to respect boundaries. That's my main.
Yeah. Yeah. So I understand that, and I mean that's completely, I think, the right way to go. What I've seen though, at least this time, and I don't know other times, but this time I've seen that the V1 or 110 to 111 bump was very underestimated by most of the providers. Like I mean, I was talking about it with Christian. He's not here, unfortunately, but I think that from up the tower where you folks design these things and you know the complexity and the challenge it poses, maybe it would be worth like in certain versions saying, hey, this one is a tough one, right? Like this one is not just change some numbers in your dependencies and you know, like some versions are very easy and some are really, really complicated. And that's just the nature of it because the project needs to evolve. And maybe like red flagging, right? Like saying, hey, this one is not going to be easy for you providers, right? And then maybe people can plan ahead, something like that.
Just can I answer? Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I know you have not been here, but basically we have been talking about this for, I would say, the last 1 year or two.
Oh.
We wrote that migration guide with like 20 pages and we're pointing to it so often. I'm not sure what else I mean, I totally agree. It's like a huge effort. Hopefully you'll never do like that kind of contract bump ever again, to be absolutely honest with you. But I think we spent so much time on like, you know, writing proposals on how we do this. Like this was like already like 1.5 years ago or something that we started this whole thing and continuously bringing up, hey, this is a ton of effort. Asked like, how's it going? And like, we did so much for that. I'm not sure what else we could have done. I mean,
the question is then,
it obviously doesn't help like everyone who's not in that meeting or who's not reading the release notes or who's every provider that is not actually maintained. But I'm just not sure what else we should have done.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean that's again then a case of you can say it louder but not clearer. And if people don't listen, then what can you do, right?
Yeah. But let me say, I think that that's a fair comment. You know, we can. I don't know, but if something come to mind and some send more mail to the main list, etc., I think that is not an issue. We put a lot of effort. Is not sending an additional email that make the problem is really having people that listen to this message. But yeah, maybe the next time we will try to add, I don't know, more public communication. So we reach people that do not attend the meetings. That could be a way to amplify the message. At the same time, I don't want to spam, you know, the mailing list. There are, I don't know, 2,000 people in the SIG cluster Lifecycle mailing list. And
I think we're relatively quiet on the mailing list.
Yes.
But I think on one side is basically getting the message to people. But then if the people don't have the bandwidth to actually do something with that information, then it's still a problem, right? So you have to, ideally we fix both, but fixing them, we don't have enough maintainer problem. I mean, this has been going on for I don't know how long, and not just in cluster API, it's just like a general problem in open source that there are never enough maintainers. So this is probably not, I mean, we can do our best and I hope we continue to do our best, but it's probably just not fixable, to be honest, that we end up with enough maintainer bandwidth.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
Well, what I take
everything we
from
want
there
to.
is that we, as listeners, also need to do a better job, right?
Let me say it is sometimes you are aware that you're not that getting answer. The Slack is silence, so you got the feeling that the message is not landing, but at the same time you ask yourself, well, okay, if they are not listening, they are not listening, what I can do more. So there is both side of the coin. I take your comment as a good comment, as a good feedback. We could probably, but there, yeah, we can get up to a certain point. We cannot step in and do the work for the providers. It's but literally impossible. That's
I think someone might have a hand up too, although I can't see who it is.
Oh, sorry, Matt.
Yeah, it's me, Mike. I was just going to chime in. Since Azure notably lagged way behind, I think this is good feedback, and I think maybe there's more we could have done to communicate it. But ultimately, the reason Azure, that CapZ took so long, is just what Fabrizio was saying. Lack of maintainer bandwidth. It's basically, it's not even a full-time thing for me right now. I go to all the meetings. I was well aware this was a big, painful change. I started a PR and tried to iterate on it for a while. Wasn't making a lot of progress, and it was, in our case at least, it was totally just due to us not having quite enough horsepower to deal with it. And in the end, Christian and a bunch of you came and kind of bailed us out because you learned enough on CapV and other places to make it happen. So that was very much appreciated. We don't intend to have other people have to work on it, and hopefully we can do better in the future. But at least in this case, I'm not sure what else the maintainers could have done. And in the end, it was kind of heroic that Christian and people kind of got it done for us. So we really appreciate it. But it is what it is, I guess.
I mean, just to add to the +1 festival, I realize this is like probably the most minor of all providers, but yeah, like it wasn't until last week that Damiano put up a patch for the Cap K provider to go from 110 to 111. So like even I've been kind of like dreading this, and I don't think Cap K is a very complicated provider at all. So yeah, no, I appreciate the discussion here. I think it's been really good, and I think sometimes going through these tough issues is difficult. Yeah, please go ahead.
I think that there is a way of communicating that I like and that maybe is underestimated. So for every release, we go and we open an issue on each provider, or at least on each provider that we have on the radar. Maybe we have to work a little bit on that issue. And now it is basically copy paste of a message. We have to add a little bit more. Hey, red def comma alert because this issue is this release is, we have to add more. This is a way, and we go basically on the repository of the provider. If there are active maintainer, they should see the issue because they should look at their own provider backlog basically. I think this one is a way that we can improve. This one is I will drop the note to the release team, which is taking care of this.
I think Stefan had his hand up as well.
Yep. I think there's also a certain, let's say the other way around. I think what we also see here is, I don't know how old cluster API exactly is, but I would say the later in the life cycle of a project you change something, the more it's hitting like more people in probably more problematic phase, right? So I think probably the amount of changes we did and that they were so breaking a lot of ways. So, I mean, basically the beta 2 contract enforces that every provider creates a new API version, right? I think probably we now have to be, or very quickly get to a point where we're just not doing that sort of stuff anymore at all. That basically we only go in steps that are incremental in a way that are just not that breaking. So just one example, there was like a discussion around, hey, we should be reshuffling the idea of a bootstrap provider and come up with like, what was the thing, like splitting up in machine and bootstrapping or something like that. I think probably we're beyond the point where we should do stuff like that as a project. I mean, the good thing with beta 2 was basically what we did on the core copy APIs and what we did on the contract is we basically aligned them, I would hope, to 95% plus to the API conventions of Kubernetes. And that should not be necessary. It should not be necessary to do another round of that. That breaks the same way. Right. So I hope that, yeah, it will be painful, but I hope that gets us to a point that is, from a provider point of view, from a contract point of view, as close as like a V1 that we could get to. So we might, I'm not saying beta 2 will be V1, but I hope just that for future contracts, essentially, we'll be able to basically do them in a non-breaking way. Let's see. This is always like a case-by-case thingy, but I really hope that we basically just adding on top and keep the amount of breaking changes to an absolute minimum going forward.
Yeah, good points. Okay, so this is a good discussion. I do want to note that we're about halfway through the meeting at this point, and we do have a few more topics and potentially a demo from Richard. Does anybody else have questions about the topic that Nolan brought up here? Great discussion, by the way. Okay, then we will move on. Matt, you've got the next one about, has anyone done machine deployment versus machine pool benchmark?
Yeah, that's pretty much the whole thing. We had a machine pool working group meeting yesterday, and Satyam is interested in making a blog post. He would have been here, but it's like after midnight for him. So I'm just asking on his behalf if anyone has done this before, so that he could leverage that. Otherwise, he's going to start from scratch. Stefan?
So we didn't do it, and I'm not aware of anyone else doing it. But I'm curious about like what kind of benchmarking. Is this like, I don't know, machine creation speed or like performance on the machines that have been created, and also a bit of like what the underlying goal is, like basically give people like data to decide if they should use machine pool or machine deployments because one is more performant than the other. Is this like a bit of the idea of this? Or just in case you know, I don't know.
Yeah, I think the general idea was to elucidate a little more on the docs that we already have about why you would use machine pools versus machine deployments. And then maybe also add onto that some benchmarking numbers. But in terms of the benchmark, we talked about it quickly. And yeah, I don't know that just machines versus machine pools already provisioned and all that would be very interesting. Maybe it would be. But so it probably involves scaling, I would think, how quickly things scale and all that. But I don't think it's defined at all. He was just thinking about making a blog post comparing the two approaches, and ideally we'd have some benchmarking to show that there is a difference or there isn't. Fabrizio?
I'm just thinking out loud. So from a customer API perspective, they have the same relevance. Yeah, we know that machine pool has to catch up a little bit, but they have the same relevance. I think I'm just thinking about what the benchmark is going to prove, because when we enter in the performance land, and especially for machine pool, at the end, what we are testing is the underlying. I don't think that cap is a. I think the cap is an invariant. So cap just give you a cloud init. Is just the time, or tells the cloud provider, give me a VM. So what are we going to benchmark? The cloud provider? Are we going to benchmark, I don't know, how VM are faster or slower than VM groups? I don't know the exact name in CAPZ. Because from the CAPI point of view, I don't see differences. I don't think that a reconciler is lower than the other, or that this difference is relevant for the user. But let me say, I think that from maintainer point of view, data are useful. The key message is that their option, pick the one that best suits you. But at the end, I'm really curious about what we are going to measure, because it seems to me that we're going to measure different cloud primitives instead of copy options.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, there obviously could be some performance difference in the CAPI code with them, but I think it's going to be overwhelmed. I think basically you're just going to be testing, in this case, Azure machines versus a VMSS or auto scaling group on AWS or whatever. So I'm not sure it's that interesting, but I wanted to ask if anybody had gone there yet. Maybe the blog post is just good enough talking about the functional differences between the two.
I will add
But yeah, this is good feedback.
without
Sorry, go
going
ahead.
too deeply into the details, I will add a slightly similar kind of like I kind of agree with what Fabrizio is saying here, that at some level, yeah, we'll be benchmarking how the cloud behaves as opposed to like how cluster APIs behaved. And I have done some like skunk work projects around that in the past, and I've had people kind of like advise me that you're kind of getting into the realm of like pitting one cloud against another at that point. So it becomes I think the data becomes very sensitive at that point to start sharing and everything. So I'm just sharing that anecdotally as an experience of, I kind of looked at something similar in the past.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody else have comments or questions about Matt's topic here? All right. We will move on to the next topic. This one's mine. So the other day, Stefan had kind of pinged about what was going on with dynamic resource allocation and cluster API and the cluster autoscaler. So I went and did a little bit of research, and I think, there's some good news and some bad news. So first of all, when using a cluster autoscaler, just as like users should know that if they're using DRA with the cluster autoscaler, they need to be using the structured parameters form of DRA, which is where the resource slices are actually defined, and you're not using resources that are like network attached, because the cluster autoscaler doesn't have any understanding of those at the moment, at least. And it's not clear that scaling nodes would actually change anything there. So from what I could tell in the cluster autoscaler now, scaling from 1+ should be fine with cluster API and DRA, because it will just use the nodes as the source of information or the source of truth for scaling. Scale from 0, it's a different story. And as Stefan and Nadir and Fabrizio kind of hinted at in the thread we were talking in, the scale from 0 probably isn't going to work. So looking at it, there is a new piece of like kind of the node contract that we need to pass back from scaling. When scaling from 0, this node info is something that we're responsible for creating to inform the cluster autoscaler, what the nodes would look like. And we'll need to fill in this local resource slices. So currently in cluster API, we use information that could be supplied either on the scalable resource in the form of annotations, or optionally information that the provider has given on the infrastructure machine template about what the nodes will look like. So I am guessing that the next thing we're going to need to figure out is like, how would CAPI want to expose this information? Because ultimately the cluster autoscaler is going to need to understand what are the resource slices that need to be associated with that node. So I have a feeling we probably have some work to do here to figure out what we want to do to answer this question. And then, the cluster autoscaler could read that information and use it. I see someone has their hand up, but I cannot see who it is.
Yep.
So please go ahead.
I have it up. Can you switch back to the code for 1 second?
Yeah.
Just from understanding, so what we've been doing up until now with like CPU, memory, a bunch of other stuff that we did around ARM, about architecture in the OS, is that basically filling out line 50 node info here?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And now we have this other thing. So one thing, just from understanding that would work. So one thing that we could do, like just hacky variant, I don't know if that's the best option, is if you talk about scalable resource, we could basically say something like, hey, on a machine deployment machines that we put an annotation on there, and you have like the marshaled version of that resource slice array on there. And they could probably like a very, very bad idea, but that would work functionality wise. And similarly, we could have a status field in the info machine template with an array of resource slices.
So I think
and
yeah,
from there. I mean, that would be enough to make it work. I'm not saying it's the ideal way to model it.
Having an API solution is the way to solve this the best way. But I think for what you're talking about, that option looks very similar to what we do now, how we allow labels and taints to go through on a, like a taint kind of is structured in the same way, in a similar way that like a resource slice could be. So yeah, we could make an annotation and allow users to provide resource slices here as like a hacky way to do it first, right? And then I don't like that option, but
is Joel still in the call?
Yeah, no, Joel might have left the call like when he heard.
I'm here. Sorry, I was distracted doing something else. Was mic'd up?
No, perfect.
Stay distracted.
That was just good.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think ultimately, what we want, I think, is something that's probably closer to, if I can spell. I mean, probably following in the same pattern as our opt-in scale from 0. It's like probably ultimately we'll probably want to have something available in the status of the machine template. That's probably going to make sense. But then in the short term, so like in the long term, we probably want something in the status here. We probably want to keep adding to the status of the machine template. And in the short term, we can allow the hacky annotations to be the override, or we can always allow these annotations to override whatever value comes from here. But that I have a feeling it'll kind of look similar.
Yeah. I mean, it's really ugly to put this into an annotation, but we do know that we have a problem with info providers implementing status fields.
Right, exactly. So like the annotation would at least give users like an override, right? So they could make it work if they need to. So I guess in terms of next steps, like, should I start to write up some opt-in enhancement for resource slice stuff?
Just one more question. And this is basically what like the other providers in the autoscaler are doing. Like the API in autoscaler that was added was essentially an autoscaler provider is supposed to fill out this field. And that's how it's being implemented across providers. Right? So it's basically already pretty clear what we have to do for cluster API and autoscaler to make this work.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Let me see. I was going to say but at the risk of going deep into the code here, I'm trying to remember which one it is. But one of these functions in here, we have there's a function to create the node template, and we basically read it off of. We read it by attempting to calculate the infrastructure machine template, and if we can't do that, we look for the annotations, and then that's kind of where it comes from. Yep. I can't find. Oh, here we go. Yeah. So this is where we do it here. So we try to determine what the node would look like, and we go through and fill out the capacity and everything. And I guess this is where we would want to pull it from, but I don't think we have anything there for that currently.
So is this an empty function here, or?
Well, actually, now I'm wondering,
it's already there, right?
Did someone already do this? Yeah, because when I looked at it before, I didn't see that. Where's that coming from? And I realize we're running short on time here, so.
Yeah, I mean we can put this. We can.
All right, looks like we already put a pretty.
It's already an annotation.
Yeah, so this is for the GPU.
Okay, so this is not probably not like a full resource slice. It's more
if
you have a GPU annotation, then we build up an internal resource slice here, for a GPU,
right?
Make that work.
So this is just for GPU devices. So now we have to ask ourselves the question. It's like, okay, if we're going to create an annotation for this, like, do we want people just to be putting the resource slice in, or do we want them to be talking about other things?
I see. Yeah, definitely. If you want to start working on something there, sounds good to me. As you were just starting to say.
Okay.
Definitely, if you open an issue or PR or wherever this will go. I think he's not here, but feel free to also ping Nadir. I think he
Yeah,
would be interested in that.
absolutely. Cool. Thank you. Alrighty. Any other questions or comments about the DRA CAPI cluster autoscaler stuff? Okay. Richard, you've got the next couple topics about container days and then a little demo. I'm going to try to make you co-host, but I'm not sure it's going to work well.
Cool. Yeah. So the first one is very self-explanatory. It's container days in London next week. There's actually 3 CAPI talks over the 2 days. So I'll go to them and I guess report that, but also I'll take the links when the videos are available and put them into our docs as well so that people can then view their sessions as well if they want to. And obviously, if anyone is in London and would like to have a beer, that's a separate topic. And
Now I'm sad I'm not going to be there.
yeah, I went to FOSDEM the weekend and someone was trying to tell me that Cappy's died. So I had to sort of re-educate that point of view. But I'm digressing. So on the last one, I wasn't going to demo this, but just based on what Fabrizio said earlier on, I have been working on a utility that would do 2 things around the CAPI contracts. One is you could point it at a CRD, a provider CRD that's implementing the contract, and then it would tell you whether your CRD is compliant with that particular type of contract. Point it to any of the contracts, and then the second part to it is from that contract you can also generate the docs. So currently we have docs on our site that we just manually edit and try and keep them all in sync. So it also generates the markdown from the contract. Initially, the contract was defined in essentially just a config file, but Fabrizio, you pointed out that actually we have a package, an internal package, so actually in the CAPI project internal contract. So it's been changed to use that as the source. So actually the code within that package is the source. So it does mean certain things if we want to get all of the niceties in there. So, examples, we have example code in the docs. Essentially, it will mean things like the queue builder annotations within the comments within there if we want to have that. But it's work in progress. And basically, the idea is, having worked on lots of providers, I want to make sure that when I make changes, that they adhere to the CAPI contract. And especially when you start a new provider, it's quite hard to miss something. And so it should essentially just list out all of the validation errors, saying, hey, you haven't implemented control plane endpoint, or you have, but it's the wrong type of thing. I can show you quickly. It has a lot of very rough edges. If people are interested, or I can do it when it's a bit more polished.
I think I figured out a way to make you co-host, so I think you should be able to share away. So yeah, I'd say go for it. You got 15 minutes here.
Okay, it won't take that long. It'll take about a minute.
Yeah, I'm seeing multiple calls in chat for demo.
So let me just in the top pane of the terminal, you can see that there's a validate subcommand, and you point it at a custom resource definition. In this case, it's the Docker cluster one. Now it infers from the CRD what type of contract it should be based on the naming conventions that we say. Again, that's open. We could just make it a bit more explicit and say, hey, this is an infra cluster contract that it should be adhering to. So the idea is you run it. Hopefully it'll come back with something. There are quite a few bugs, so don't read too much into it at the moment. But essentially, then it will print out the things that are failing. So, for example, it should say if you've got fields missing, and then in this case here, there's type mismatch. So the idea you could put it into CI, or you could just run it as a tool when you're creating a new provider, or just as an ongoing basis, just to make sure you haven't, I guess, diverged from the contract set by CAPI. And then in the second part, in the bottom half of my terminal window, you can do docs. And then you say which contract you want to adhere to. And actually, at the moment, these are just essentially the struct names within the contract package within CAPI. Still a lot of work to do, but the idea is then this just spits out a bunch of markdown. It needs to be, improved, but then we would generate the site stocks from this, so it's all consistent and in line. It's a whole bunch of things that need to be added to this. It's not doing the examples. It's not. We need some preamble and postamble, because in our docs we have a bit of an introduction saying, hey, don't rely on undocumented behavior and all these things. So we could have that as essentially stuff that's imported as well. And the reason I guess I did this was because we're making changes to machine pool. So we're trying to bring it in line with V1, Beta 2, like machine deployment type contract. So I thought it'd be a good way just to prove that it does adhere to that contract. So that's it really. Early days. I've done another demo when it's actually more published or polished. Sorry, not published.
Yeah, very cool. Seeing some good comments in chat. And Damiano is curious, can you also specify the version of the contract? Or I guess, will you be?
Yes. Yeah, you can. So I can, let me just quickly, so you can specify the version from a provider point of view. So it defaults to the stored version in your CRD. But also you can specify the contract from let me just quickly, if people haven't seen this. Hopefully you can see my VS Code window.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. So this is the, I guess, the CAPI contract package. So it takes into account, for example, this one here, provisioned. So in B1 Beta 1, it was status ready. B1 Beta 2 is status initialization provision. So you can also say which version of CAPI, although actually it's more than likely going to be the most recent version. So you can do both version of the provider and version of CAPI as well. Contract versions, sorry. But yeah, that's it.
Yeah, very cool. I think you're getting a lot of kudos in chat there and everything. And yeah, awesome work there, Richard. Thanks for sharing it. All right. There are no provider updates or feature group updates, and this is the end of our agenda. So unless anyone has ad hoc topics they would like to bring up, we will end our meeting and take about 10 minutes of our day back. So going once, going twice. All right. Thanks for coming out, everybody, and we will see y'all next week.